or watching the Seals, the ones that played baseball. We had spinning plates to sit on, and ferry boats to ride on, and streetcars that took us anywhere we cared to go. Times changed, and the places we love to go aren't there anymore. But in the scrapbook of our minds, we remember it all, just the way it was.
You have to have been living there in those days to really appreciate what San Francisco meant. You felt like you were part of the heartbeat of San Francisco. You were proud to be from San Francisco, because no matter where you went, you had a certain aura about you that it almost spelled out, hey, I'm a San Franciscan.
Elegance is a word I overuse, but the city had a great deal of style about it.
You just knew you were living in the best city in the world. In those days, all women lunched, and we went to all these restaurants around Union Square that were specifically for shoppers.
If you did go downtown, or if we did go downtown, we definitely went to Plum's.
Lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, 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 lollipop, lollipop, oh, lolly, lolly, lolly.
And you'd walk in, and here was pink and white and candy and ice cream and everything a kid could possibly want, and it was wonderful.
And if you had a date, you would go to Blum's after the movie and have your coffee crunch or lemon crunch cake.
The whole mood was one of elegance.
I can't explain how people say, we're going downtown. Women dress up, men dress up, and you go downtown.
Because when you went downtown, you wanted to look nice. I mean, you wanted to wear gloves and a hat and
The little Mary Jane shoes and your little purse. And everybody looked like that. Looking back, I don't know why we wore a hat and coat and gloves just to go shopping. By the time we got home, our feet hurt. Your hat was a little bit crooked. And you were just so glad to get onto a streetcar and sit down.
I mean, every store downtown was run by the people who owned it, who had their names on it. You know, from Liebes's to Livingston's to Magnon's.
Ransohoff, Magnon's, Livingston's, O'Connor Moffett, Ruth Brothers.
You walked in and you saw a Roos at Roos Brothers. You saw a Livingston at Livingston's.
I always went to iMagnon's and saw something that I wanted. Of course, I couldn't afford it, but there's a reward in wanting something, actually seeing something that you want. And you could always see it at iMagnon's.
it was always a dilemma when we wanted to return something. Like I'd borrow my mother's mink stole so I could go in and say I wanted to return something because I was afraid they wouldn't take it back.
And in 1995, you couldn't take it back. After more than 120 years in business, iMagnon held its final sale and closed its doors.
Oh, it's sad. I mean, change is always sad, especially the older you get. And I can start getting maudlin about what a wonderful town it was, but I'm really mourning my lost youth more than anything else. No, downtown was a kick. It was amazing. You know, Benny Goodman would be at the Mark Hopkins, Shaw at the Palace, Freddie Martin at the St. Francis. You know, and bands at the Mark and at the Fairmont, and dance teams, and there were nightclubs with chorus girls and showgirls, and it was real 1930 stuff.
Of course, we didn't all live downtown. We came from Marin, the East Bay, and the Peninsula. Herb Caen remembers coming from Sacramento.
I first arrived here from Sacramento, came in on a ferry boat, a car ferry, of course. When I got off the ferry boat, through the most exciting building in town to me at that time, the ferry building. Hundreds, it seemed, of streetcars making that loop in front of the ferry building. I mean, thousands and thousands of people. It was the noisiest place I can remember ever being in, but exciting noise, great noise, the noise of a metropolis.
streetcar system was so efficient. You could go anywhere in the city, and I do mean anywhere.
And there was a conductor and a motorman. They had to wear uniforms, too. You know, with the squared-off cap and the gold chain, and it's like a railroad. Looking at their watches, nifty.
On Mark Street, because we had 4 streetcar tracks going up and down Mark Street, we had the center tracks where the Mark Street Railway and the outer tracks were the Muni, and the competition would show up there maybe by the one car racing the other car getting to the next corner to pick up passengers.
They try to get you in the Muni, the others would try to get you in the Market Street Railway. It was competitive. Once in a while, somebody got injured because they had only about, 24 inches between the streetcars.
So these cars were really heavy, and they were close together, and they didn't stop for anything. And you had to weave yourself through. Every time you cross Market Street, you take your life in your feet.
The other thing we used to do is the old streetcars had what they called cow catchers on them, one in the front and one in the back. Cow catcher was up in the back, and the streetcar was packed. We'd sit on that and didn't have to pay to go wherever you were going.
It was a no-no, and there was a sign painted on the window that said it's unlawful to ride on fender. But anytime there's a sign, that's just the reason why people do things.
I'm hanging on to the cow catcher. You know, sometimes the conductor would try and get me, but I'm way down in the other corner. If he gets off, I take off. No problem.
Of course, if the darn thing ever fell over and you landed on the street, that was...
3 or 4 of us were back here riding, and the chain let go, and off just back it went. And we went right along with it. This is how that was the way of life in those days. So.
But you did a lot of crazy things like that.
They used to have cheese rolling contests, the Italians. They called that Cow Hollow, that neighborhood, and it was predominantly Italian people. I got relatives still that were born in Cow Hollow. And they had a big wide leather belt, 4 or 5 of them. It was like a track, and the track was all the way to Marina Boulevard. And they would, like a bowling ball, they'd spin that thing, and it would run. Sometimes you're on a streetcar, and you watch these cheese. It was pretty smooth bumping along. Sometimes they passed the streetcar.
But rolling cheeses weren't the only things that might pass you on a streetcar. If you were on the Stockton Street line on a November night, you might just see a 45-foot tree go by on the way to one of San Francisco's most elegant stores, the City of Paris.
Everybody would go to the City of Paris because it was the biggest tree in the whole world.
Took off the front doors, took all the counters out. Everybody wanted to know this. They wanted to know how the tree got in there because, you know, it went branched out all over that rotunda.
It had the most beautiful decorations. It was just everything that a tree should be. And even if you didn't have a tree at home, you could go there and see this tree and it would be Christmas for you.
Being at the top of the rotunda, we had all the school children would come in, 20 or 30 of, little youngsters would come in, and they would be so awestruck by this tree revolving around, and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, that drove me crazy. They played it all day long. It was awful. The problem with these little ones, they get so excited that they would balance themselves on the top railing. And we were, 4 floors from the bottom. And those youngsters, if they weren't watched by their parents, and very often they were not, it could have been a dreadful accident. Many, many times I grabbed those little things by their coats and pulled them off there.
C'est si bon de partir n'importe où.
The City of Paris was one of the most impressive stores in San Francisco. It had a beautiful motto, which was a ship, and which is the emblem of the City of Paris, the City of Paris in France, the city itself. And underneath, in Latin, it had fluctuat nec mergitur. We float, but never sinks. And Mr. Verdier, president of the City of Paris, and Mrs. Desson were there to really make sure that they won.
Mr. Verdier brought French culture into the homes of San Franciscans, and it wasn't always easy.
We had a problem of education. We were noticing, for instance, that the women would like to come to the store, to the Verdier cellars down in Normandy Lane, but wouldn't like to be seen going out with a bottle of wine. So what I did in my tenure as manager was to ask the manager of the shoe department to save all the boxes he could. So we started saying, you know, we can put that in a shoebox for you. Is that okay? So instead of one bottle, said the shoebox takes 2 bottles. So we had a special promotion.
From its beginnings in 1859, the city of Paris had always promoted a standard of elegance for San Franciscans.
We went to the city of Paris quite a bit. You would go there more for imported things, but it was accustomed to be shown the clothes. It was not accustomed to look through racks.
In those days, when you wanted gloves, you sat down in an upholstered chair, and then they'd bring a little pillow over, and you put your elbow up, and they'd size the gloves on you finger by finger, and that's how you bought your gloves.
We didn't just look at the people and hand them something and say, you know, give us your money and get out of here. I would dress all up in the finest clothes. Can you imagine any young woman having anything nicer? The choice of all the beautiful clothes in the store, hairdressers to fix your hair, milliners to see that you had the right hats. Everything was lovely. It was just like a dream come true. And everybody who was anybody was sooner or later in or out of the city of Paris. That's why it was a great lot of fun to work there. We just had a passing parade.
But the parade didn't last. In 1972, the city of Paris had to close, and one of our most elegant landmarks was scheduled for demolition.
You know, stores close all the time and did then, and they still continue to. But I don't think that the general feeling with the city of Paris that it was a store. I think it was a part of their life, a part of their era, a part of their family. And that it was felt almost unanimously, that feeling of loss.
On November 5th, 1982, the new Neiman Marcus store opened on the corner where the city of Paris once stood. Above its entrance, the city of Paris ship still sails on its stained glass sea.